and welcome to the Gyropedia TV studio. My name is Phil Harwood. The date is Friday the 13th of December 2019. We are live here in the Gyropedia TV studio in York, but we are beaming and transmitting across the world. So what is this episode all about? Yes, it's about the Gyropedia that you can expect to see next year. What's happened? More so that you can get even more value out of your gyroplane. You can master your gyroplane. Here we are, Gyropedia 2020. Okay, before we get into the meat of it, some of you will have a little box that's to the right of your video screen. This allows you to send messages beamed live into this studio and they will be forwarded to me. Now, I won't be answering all your questions, certainly immediately, but if we have time at the end of the show, we'll look through the questions and we will try and answer them. So send me some questions and that would be awesome. We are here live. Now, what we're going to do before we get into next year is just have a little look at what's happened in the Gyropedia in 2018 and 2019. Because some of you that are watching have been using the Gyropedia for some time and you've seen it evolve. Now, if you were a user before 2018, you're probably one of those people that said, Phil, it's a little bit complicated. It's maybe a little bit amateurish even in the user interface. But in 2018, in February 2018, some wonderful chaps in Pakistan did some great development and they created the user interface that we can see right now. So 2018, it became very phone friendly, it became very iPad friendly, and it just looks good. And we're not intending changing that user interface at all. What about 2019? Well, a number of things happened in 2019. Again, the February release in 2019, it separated out the training records from the actual training material. This was all to be a lot closer to the three main aspects of flying. And you'll know that that is knowledge, skills, and attitude. In 2019, for knowledge, we absolutely enhanced the online training course for pilot, initial pilot training, and also if you're transitioning from being a fixed-wing pilot. Now, the online training courses, they had some progress bars, they had multiple choice questions, and they had the Oreo questions that your instructor will be asking you. But I'm sure you know about them. There was also the skills element. We introduced a lovely matrix of flights so that it's really easy to see the progress of your training. And what was the third thing I said? Knowledge, skills. What's the third one? Come on, it's on the tip of your tongue. It's attitude. So of course, what we did was we created some tools so that you can show your insurer that you have a risk-averse attitude. Now, the elephant in the room is insurance has been getting a little bit more difficult to get, but we spent a lot of time with them this year and they have said, show me people that are risk averse and we'll do what we can to give them good premiums. So I'm sure you've seen some stuff about insurance. Also, there were a couple of big live events happened. We did the pilot development course. We went on tour in the UK. And if you're an existing pilot, seriously get onto the pilot development course because that is something which helps you keep and get more value out of your gyroplane. And then, and we'll probably talk about this more than once, we went to Arizona for the Master the Gyroplane event. If you were at the Master Gyroplane event, and I know some of you watching right now, give yourself a big round of applause. Thank you very much. So the Master the Gyroplane event is where we spent some time with instructors and we looked at a voluntary code of practice for instructors and we spent time with students and pilots. Now, I know a lot of you didn't make it to Arizona, but one of the things we'll talk about later is how we can use this TV studio in order to replay some of those elements from the Master the Gyroplane. Something else that happened in 2019 that was new, and that was we put out some email campaigns to do with what we called a little bit and often. The idea is that if you keep refreshing your skills a little bit and often, well, you know what, that's part of having a risk-averse attitude. Now, this started off with a flurry. You might notice some people say, Phil, the little bit and often is now a little bit and not quite as often as it was. So what's happened with that? Well, you know what? The whole concept is that these emails reflect your where you are in your pilot flying. Are you a student? Are you a pilot? Are you an instructor? One of the things we found when we looked at it, 50% and more of people transitioning to gyroplanes new were actually not starting from scratch. They're coming in from fixed wing or from helicopters. So we wanted to change the emails so that they're more appropriate. And most of you have now told us whether you had previous experience of flying. So there you go. That's what's happened with the Gyropedia in 2018 and 2019. But now let's get to the meat of it. Let's get the preview of Gyropedia 2020. Okay, so what's new in Gyropedia 2020? Well, you know what? One of the biggest things, you already know about it, because you're here live in the studio. Yes, one of the big events is to save on travel. We're able to use internet technology, live stream technology, and we're able to, from the studio, beam out across the world. Now, I know you've all been in the Gyropedia and you've been at the top menu because you've found the icon that says TV studio. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this now. So what's this about? Okay, so about once a month, we're looking to do events like these, about 45 minutes to an hour on topics. Now, they're not generally going to be about the Gyropedia, they're actually going to be about aspects of gyroplane flying. These will be the elements that we had on the Master the Gyroplane course. When we did the Master the Gyroplane in Arizona, most of the sessions were about an hour long. And so what we're going to do is take each of these sessions and then once a month we will replay these live in the studio. And of course you have the ability, I can see the questions coming in on my screen in front of me. You'll be able to ask these questions and we'll be able to answer them either live or offline or on the next event. So that's the TV studio. But there's also more internet technology, and that's called the web classroom. That's the next icon along. Now, the web classroom is different. You see, the TV studio is kind of one way. It's, I'm presenting, I'm talking to you, and yes, I can get messages, but the web classroom allows us to interact face to face. We've been doing this for the last fortnight, and you know what? It's absolutely awesome. What happens is in the web classroom, I can see everybody who's sitting at their computer with their webcam. And we're a proper class. We can talk to each other and we can talk about all sorts of things. We can share screens. We can look at aspects and some of the training material. And that's really, really useful. It's a different studio. It's more of a classroom. And typically we have class sizes up to about 15. It really, really is awesome. We've also done some one-to-one training, and this is really handy. So in 2020, some of the big events were to do with the web classroom. Some was to do with the TV studio. But also, the next thing that's coming up solves a particular problem. And what's that problem? The problem is either you're new to the Gyropedia and you turn up at the main screen and you're not quite sure how to use it. Or, more likely, you're a user that's been using it for some time, but you know what? You're probably only using that much and you want to know how to use the bits that you're not actually using. Well, that's what we've done. And I'm going to show you something that's in the software that you'll be able to use from January next year. Okay, I'm going into the Gyropedia. Just before I do, I'd like to let you know something that a lot of people have missed. On this first screen, most people just go straight in and register. However, if you scroll down, there's some extra information that you may or may not know. Now, this video here is actually the 4-minute synopsis of what happened in 2019, which is why I didn't go into it in great detail. Scrolling down, we can see about the knowledge, skills, and attitude. So if you missed most of the stuff in 2018-19, it is worth a read. If you go right to the very bottom, there's something in here to do with gyroplane insurance. Now, I mentioned insurance earlier, and we're working with insurers so that if you are using the structured training within the Gyropedia, you can share certain information with the insurer so that they know that you've got a risk-averse attitude. We're trialling this in a number of countries, and really it's getting quite exciting. The other thing at the bottom of the screen, just for completeness, if you've been on an IPGT training course or a training course within the Gyropedia, then if you've been given a certificate, then you can validate that. So that's just a little bit on the side, because a lot of people didn't realize from the first screen that if you scroll down, there's actually quite a bit more. But I'm going to log in now. Now, Jason Wilkinson, I know that you're watching, and this next thing actually was your idea. What we're going to do is we're going to log in, and what we're going to see is a little bit of a tour guide up the top, and we're going to say, okay, this person has logged in for the first time. Do you want any help? Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hide that for the moment, and I'm going to show you how this works, because this is really actually quite intelligent. This looks at your use of the Gyropedia, and it tries to prompt you through what you want to do next. How do you get it? Little icon up here. You click on the little pop-up fill, and we're going to get a message that says, what would you like to do next? And the options are all to do with how you're using the Gyropedia or how you're not using the Gyropedia. So it will drive you through it. Let's take an example. So for example, we'll dive into the training material and learn how to navigate. You see what it's done is it's highlighted training material. If you move through it, it's giving you a step-by-step guide. There you can see gyroplane pilot training. If we go into here, again, you can see it's highlighting where you should be moving and taking you through. Now, that really is quite exciting. We've seen it there in its very simplistic mode, but the test that we've done means it can show you the elements of the Gyropedia that you have not been using. Now, I'm going to return to the main screen, but here's something that a lot of people don't know. I can go back to the main screen in two ways. I can actually go using the Gyropedia icon in here, or I can go using the home button. Do you know the difference? Now, some of you do, some of you don't. Generally, we recommend you go back to the main screen using the Gyropedia icon, the Gyropedia logo here, because it keeps whatever tools you've got open, it keeps open. And that's really handy, because when you get used to using it, having the screen remember where you were really does save a lot of key clicks. But you know, there's a chap in Uruguay, he's watching just now. Hello, Claudio from Uruguay. It was your idea that said, you know what, we want a simple way to get back to the original menu. So if you click the home button, then we're going to get back to this nice place where we started from. That's just a little tip on the side. Okay, what we're going to do now is get into 3 meaty features of Gyropedia 2020, and at least 2 of them you've probably never seen before, and the feedback we're getting is awesome. Now, all of these features are actually live just now, because let me tell you what happens when we come up with a new feature. What we do is we put it into the software at the time that it's developed, but we don't tell anybody. And we don't tell anybody so that the beta testers who are used to using it can see it live, can test it, give us feedback before we make the announcement. So everything I'm going to do now you can actually try after this show. The first thing we're going to do is really to do with instructor training. Now, I know a number of you watching have been through either the IPGT instructor course or a different instructor course. And there's been different levels of complexity throughout the years. I'm going to show you something that really is incredibly simple, and it's new. We trialed it about 3 weeks ago in York. I'll let you follow it yourself. This is in the training material, and this is only applicable to instructors. We're going to go down to the bottom to the toolkit for flight training that's always been there. And we go into the toolkit for flight training. It just looks like the normal syllabus. We click a lesson, and here we're going to see a bit of the magic. Okay, in the past we had great big folders, then we went to little books, but you know, there's only one question that people want to answer when they're doing the training course. How do you teach a lesson? Well, what we've done is we've really simplified this, and there's an icon here to the left-hand side called How to Teach a Lesson. Can you see it there? It's the first icon under the Instructor Toolkit. And if we expand that, what you're going to get is a very simple worksheet that just gives you some highlights. I apologize, I'm scrolling a bit fast, you can't actually read it, but you can see what's important about teaching this lesson, what are the general instructor notes, guidance in using the Gyropedia training material, because you've got all this training material, how do you use it as an instructor? And so it'll continue, it'll give you nice, very, very simple little checklists. It just says, if you're going to teach this lesson, these are the things that you've got to do. It really couldn't be any simpler. But here's the other thing that's really important. You know what? Reading my notes doesn't really help you. You need to make your own notes, and you need to be able to refer to your notes. So look, this is what's happened. Across here on the right-hand side, you can actually click a push pin, and now you can enter the notes. And you could enter whatever notes you want and save them, and you've embedded stuff into the Gyropedia that makes sense to you. Because as I say, what we found is people reading my notes doesn't really help them. They need to make notes on their own, and you just follow through that, and voila, you can learn to prep for a lesson very, very quickly. There's a whole load of things to do with instructor training, and I'm not going to go into that. We'll save that for another day. What we are going to do is we're going to look at something that's available right now for everybody, and this really is a piece of magic. I'm going to go back up to the home screen, and I'm going to pick some of the lessons. You know, we've got a great big simulator at York. If you've been on the home page of IPGT, you will have seen the technology that's in a full motion simulator. But what you really want to do is run that in the Gyropedia over the web. And this is what we've started to do. It's tied to each lesson. So you go into a lesson, and this is the normal gyroplane pilot training. That's the normal training material that you're already used to going into. You can see the list of lessons, nothing new at this point. We're going to click, I'm going to choose lesson 2 because that's the first one that we really do something with. And we scroll down, and you're already used to the introductory videos. You've seen a lot of these, and you're used to the posters. Incidentally, the posters were all refreshed about 3-4 months ago. So if you were used to using posters a few years ago, it's worth a look because they've all been updated. But here's the piece of magic. If we scroll down, we can find something completely new. It's called an e-simulator. What does that mean? Well, what it means is it's a simulator embedded with computer graphics. I'm going to go full screen mode here, and you can see that this lesson starts when you're in the cruise. Lesson 2, we're talking about roll, pitch, and yaw. We're talking about flying by horizon, flying by attitude. We're looking at the airspeed indicator, and we're looking at the controls. And this used to be done just with computer graphics. Here's where the magic comes in. That's a bit of Google Earth. if I use the mouse here to grab the stick and move it to the right, you can see that the ground is actually moving. If I move it to the left, we're going to move to the left. Now, if we move the stick too far, the instructor will give you messages, and if you still go even further, it'll actually take control back off you. What is really awesome is if we run this in our full motion simulator, you know what? All the controls move. But I'm going to show you at the end of the show how you can use this at home and build your own mini version of the simulator that works live right here in the Gyropedia. Now, so far it's been in static mode, and you could be saying, you know what, that doesn't look really exciting. Well, there's a play button here. What we're going to do is click the play button, and now we're actually moving forward. We're moving through Google Earth, and we're now moving to the right and the left. But we can also see what's happening with roll, pitch, and yaw. We can see what's happening with our airspeed as we move the stick back. We can see that the airspeed decays with a delay. And if we move the stick forward, you can see we get our normal attitude and the airspeed increases. So remember, this is about teaching a lesson. Okay, now I did say that the beauty of this is that it's tied to Google Earth. And this looks a little bit mundane. It's just an area that probably doesn't mean much to you. Probably can't tell where this is in the world. Well, watch this and be amazed. First of all, when we're working with instructors, we allow instructors to configure it for their local training area. So if you're flying at the school in York, you're going to be at York. If you're flying Hawaii, you're going to be at the school in Hawaii. And if you're flying with Henry in Los Angeles, you're going to be in Los Angeles. You don't believe me? Let's have a look. Now, what's going to happen is your students, or if you're a student, whoever instructor you're linked with, you're going to get their training area. Let's go on to the full screen. Top right-hand corner, you can see if I go to Hawaii, because Mark was on the course in Arizona, there we go. We're now flying down the beach in Hawaii. Isn't that just awesome? And that's live Google Earth, and we can fly round and we can fly left, right at the element of the lesson that we're actually in. I'm going to go into more lessons in a minute. So if you have been on instructor training recently, we will have configured this for you. I know that the guys down in Australia, and I know you're watching, good morning to you, because it's actually Saturday morning for you, that you've configured this, and I can tell that you've had some awesome fun with it. Tell you what, let's show everybody where David flies, because we are in Goa and down in Adelaide. Here we go. This is David's home airfield. He's flying to the beach. So if you're flying with David Owen down in Australia, that's exactly what's going to happen. And all the lessons are configured in that way. It is just phenomenal. So remember, if you're an instructor, you can configure your own local training area, and your students will be live in your actual area. And that is worth doing. Remember, at the end of the show, I'm going to show you how you can build your own little mini sim. So let's close that down for the moment, and let's return and see where we are. So that was a simulator. I'm going to now go to lesson 3, because lesson 3 is where we introduce trim, height, and balance. So I'm going to go into the simulator now. Here it is here. It's called the eSim, and it's going to be very, very similar, but you can see now I've actually got more instruments. And that's because this lesson is where we introduce these instruments. So it looks similar, but we've got more instruments. Now we've got a throttle. So if we move the throttle, we can see we're actually going to start climbing. And if we reduce throttle, we're going to start descending. Now, the experienced pilots amongst you are going to say, what about the secondary effects of controls? Fear not, lesson 5, it's awesome. All the secondary effects controls come in. When it comes to turning, you know what? It's going to start descending when you enter a turn. That's the whole point. It's a way of teaching a lesson, and so the simulator reflects where you are. But here's something else. We've got the ability to look out. We've also got the ability to play as we did earlier, but we can also add wind because we know that in real life, it's all about coping with wind. I'm going to stick some thermals on here. And what's going to happen is we're going to see the VSI changing quite significantly on its own. Of course, it's not going to do it right now because we're on a live demo. But see, when you do this, here we go, it's moving now. The VSI is moving, and it's your job as the pilot to adjust the throttle in order to keep a level altitude. Now, as I say, with thermals on, then it will go up to about 500 foot a minute, both in climb and in descent. It's just deciding not to do it right now this minute. Because, there we go, we're on a bit of a climb now. It's all random and it's all in rough rear time. So now the lessons take on a whole new meaning, and that is great. Want to have a quick look, just one more, because I can tell that you're all so excited by the messages coming through. That's the word awesome has come through 3 times now. And I'm going to close that down and I'm going to do one more. I'm just going to go into lesson 5. And in lesson 5, here we've got the same thing again, but now we've got secondary effects. What does that mean? Watch as we move the throttle. We're actually going to change some roll and some yaw at the same time. Being quite excessive with throttle here, wouldn't necessarily do that in real life, but it's great for understanding what's happening. And this really takes the training material to a whole new ballgame. But there's more. That's the E-simulator. There's something else which can top that, and that's called an E-demonstrator. And this is really the big difference. I've saved the best till last. I'm going to go back to the main screen now, and I'm going to start from scratch. Now, this next bit is available to instructors who've got the instructor package because it's something that you use with students. So if you're a student and you are training with one of the instructors that uses the Gyropedia as their main training tool, then you'll be able to do this. Watch, this is amazing. I'm going to go into the training material. I'm going into the Instructor Toolkit. Remember, here we go, Instructor Toolkit, Flight Training. I'm going to pick lesson 14. What's lesson 14? Well, lesson 14 is takeoffs, but we don't actually climb out. We're going to fly along the runway. We're going to pop into the air. We're going to build up airspeed, and then we're going to land ahead and then backtrack. So that's a really important lesson 14. Learning to take off is really important, but watch how we break it down. So first of all, I'm selecting lesson 14 from here, and I'm selecting something called an E-demonstrator. So the E-simulator is where you control it. The E-demonstrator is different. I'm going to pick this up here. I'm going to stay at the default airfield, and it'll just take a little time to load, but here's the default airfield. Now, if you're one of the USA people who are watching this, and I know there's a number of you watching it from the USA, can you recognize this airfield? Come on, look closely. I tell you what, I'll zoom in so that you can see any more. Can you see anything different? Runway 36, some salt fields at the top. If you've ever been to Benson Days, then you'll realize that they are at Wauchula Airport in Florida. So this is Wauchula Airport. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to use this now, and I'm going to turn on some buttons to navigate it. And what we're going to do is I'm going to fly down to the start of this exercise, and here I am behind our very first MTO Sport, because that was my first gyroplane, and here we are sitting just ready to line up. And we've got this jigsaw piece. Well, if you're used to Gyropedia, you'll know about all the skills that you mark off in your training course. Well, think of each of those as a jigsaw piece. And what's going to happen as you go past each jigsaw piece, you just discuss with your instructor, and I'll show you this shortly, what you do at each point in the process. When you've covered each jigsaw piece, then voila, you have mastered flying. So what's going to happen? First of all, I'm going to go into a demonstration of this actual exercise. This tool has 3 training modes. I'm going to go into the flight demo only, and I'm going to just press play. So I'm going to put it on full screen and I'm just going to narrate through it. But what's happening now is we're lining up on the runway. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the standard controls. So you can see the big square is the stick. You've got the line above it is the pedals. And to the left, you've got the throttle. Now, when we've lined up, there's three things we do. We pre-rotate. You can see it's pre-rotating at the moment. We're just in demo mode here. So it's pre-rotating. Here we've got the rotor RPM to about 120. And now the rotor is going to accelerate. There we are, we're adding power. And stick comes back and you're going to set off down the runway. So here we are. I'll show you how you use this in a minute. But we are just about to set off. And that's us going down. What we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of zooming now so that we can model this. And I'm using the keyboard here to select the different views. And you can see we're coming to the point where if we get here, we're coming to the wheel balance attitude. So there's the wheel balance attitude. You know what? I'm going to click side view now so as that I can actually see the side view. And there's the side view of the gyroplane as we're going down. We're going to come across, that's us in the air, and now we're in the picking up airspeed mode. Now we can actually be inside the aircraft. We can look down at the instruments, and we can see the instruments with a shadow there. If we turn off shadows, you would see them clearer. And now we're going to pass the decision to land ahead, and we're going to land at this part of the runway, and then we are going to backtrack. So here we've got the first use of the tool, where we've used the Gyropedia and this new graphic to actually demonstrate what's expected of the exercise. This again can all be configured for your airfield, and it can also be configured for different models of gyroplane if the manufacturers help us get the models into the actual gyroplane. I know, Paul Adams, you're not there tonight. You're with the Chilton boys and you're out down the pub on your Christmas party, but you're going to be watching it and catch up, aren't you? Well, we put in your aircraft, or certainly as it was when you first got it, and you can see that the aircraft is now color-coded to the yellow and blue, and it will allow you to color-code the gyroplane to your actual color code for a school aircraft, or if you're a pilot, you can have this for your own aircraft. Isn't that just wonderful? Okay, what we're going to do now, I'm going to restart and I'm going to use this tool as it would be expected to be used for training. In this, I'm going to go to the training mode. I'm going to change it to the Gyropedia teaching mode. I'm also going to pull up a student and want you to notice this jigsaw piece, which is currently yellow, is going to change color. As I've selected a different student, I'm using my demo student here who's called Terry Robbins. I'm now emulating a student. It's turned blue, and that's because in his training records, he's been trained to do this, but he's not got to a level of competence. So how do we use this? Well, as an instructor, I'm just going to go, Terry, what do you think about when you're lining up? So assume that you've done your mag checks, assume that you've got your engine warm, you're just about to line up. What is it you're thinking about? And I would expect Terry to say, well, you know what, Phil, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to just check my passengers okay. I'm going to make sure I have a good lookout before I get in and certain things. Well, that is great because now we're in context and we can understand what we're going to do. But there's more. Because if we click on this jigsaw piece, what it's going to do is dynamically go into the Gyropedia and pull back what the best practice definition is for what you should be doing when you're at this point in the process. Now, here to the right-hand side, you can see that we're going to do a quick yaw. We're going to make a radio call. We're going to say our passenger lining up. The aircraft, make sure it's configured. Just going to make sure the stick is appropriate for the wind, and we're going to make sure the runway is clear. So that's the kind of thing you would do. But you know what? That's generic. At the end of the day, you need to know exactly what are you going to say on your airfield? What's the radio call that you're going to make at your airfield? And what are the switches you're going to move on your gyroplane? So here is where the magic happens. You as a student can enter your own notes, and you can enter them again like we did on the instructor course where you're updating the Gyropedia. So I'm going to put in notes. I'm not going to do the full thing. I'm just going to say check for traffic. I'm going to ensure the stick is appropriate for the wind. Okay, and then I'm going to save those notes. So I've saved those notes. They're in the Gyropedia, and I can access them within my training records, but also when I'm next here, we can enhance them because we can say, okay, Terry, what is it you do? And now when we click it, it by default is going to come up with your notes, because at the end of the day, it's really important that you learn in a way that suits you. But now we're going to go to the third mode. And the third mode is where you can use this at home in order to rehearse and get your patter correct. And I don't just mean that from an instructor viewpoint. I mean, you can do some at-home visualization flying, and you can use this tool. How does this work? Well, I'm going to put it into the third mode, which is presentation mode using notes. And now what happens is, without your instructor, you can click this and it's going to say, Terry, what do you do when you line up in pre-takeoff? What's the lining up in pre-takeoff procedure? Well, you know, what you're going to do is try and remember what the notes were. But you need to get to the point where you're actually just rattling through it. So you simply just click the space bar, and it's going to come up with your notes as if you'd created a PowerPoint presentation. It's going to say, look for traffic, and then you go, what's the next thing? I can't remember what the next thing was. What it was ensure the sticks is appropriate for the wind, and then you come up with that, and then you move on to your next position. And that exact same thing happens all the way through. So you're able to, let's just summarize this, you're able to sit in your aircraft at your airfield, and you're able to bring up each of the lessons. You're able to get it demonstrated to you, full of all the different things to do with wind. If you actually change the wind, all the stick positions all change dynamically. You can do it in crosswind, strong wind, all that works. But the real important bit, as you go through the pieces of the jigsaw, you can enter your notes and build your own presentation, which means you can run it again and again and again. And if that doesn't save you a huge amount of time, then I don't know what else will. That's what it's all about. That's an e-demonstrator. Okay, so that's the biggest thing that's happening in the Gyropedia in 2020. So we've got a few questions have come in. I've seen quite a lot of people coming in. We've got Andy Wall from the United States, Arnold Courtson, Jason Wilkinson, Frank No. Lovely to see you all. That's just so as you know, it is actually live and it's not recorded. Okay, so what we're going to do now, there's a couple of questions Katie has sorted through, and she's picked a couple that I'm just going to answer. One is to do with the logbook, and that is the pilot's logbook. It's difficult to find something. If you've got so many, I'm going to say thousands of flights. Do you know there's over 65,000 entries in the Gyropedia, which are flights or training? 65,000. That's pretty awesome. And before you ask, yes, it is backed very, very often, so don't you worry. So we're going to look at the logbook. So here we go. I'm going to go home, and this is something you might not know. We're going to go into the logbook. You can go in through here, or you can go in via flights. So we're going in via flights, and we're going to look at the pilot's training logbook. Okay, so the logbook in here, we've got lots of entries. I'd left the filter on. I've just spoiled my big reveal. There we go. So you've come to the logbook and you're going, how do I find something? Well, you should have been watching and you would know there's a thing here called Show Filter. And if we put on a filter, we can search this logbook by many, many ways. For example, if you've printed out your logbook recently and you just want to do it from the start of the year, then I've just very simply added a start date, and here we've got the flights that have been done since that date. So we can look by date, but also what's really interesting is a lot of people take passengers, and you're going, I had a passenger, but I cannot remember when I last flew them. Well, if we put the filter on and we pull up the passenger mode, then we can pull in any flight here, and it's just going to search through, and here we go, 14th of May 2019, I flew Thomas, and there we go, that was a search. So if you haven't found the filter, then it's worth looking in here. And that's really important. I also have problems when I'm typing. Sometimes, you know, I've spelt Roughworth, my home airfield, about 5 different ways. And I use this in order to look dynamically at all the places I'd flown from, found all my spelling mistakes, and then I could just sort my logbook by that spelling mistake, and then I could correct it, because that was just makes everything so nice. Now, I don't know if you print your logbook, and certainly if you have to send it to your regulator, you probably have to print it. I'm assuming you know how to print it, because up the top there's a button called, you got it, print. So if we print, you've got your gyroplane logbook, or if you've entered helicopter flights or fixed wing flights, they will also be there as well. I just wanted to let you know, these filters stay with the printout. So in the past, you had to reprint your entire logbook or print it to PDF and then just print the last few pages. Now you can pull up your logbook from a particular day and print it just from that. So that's a real enhanced version of the logbook. It wasn't there at the start of the year. It was added throughout the year, but we didn't launch it for a while, and so we're putting it in the big release for next year. Okay, we're getting near the end now, and so what I want to do is I want to show you how you can tie in the simulators to your home or your flying school. So what we've done is we've made the whole system compatible with home joysticks. Now, I'm really not that keen on home joysticks for a reason. I don't want it to become a game. All right, but you can plug in almost any standard joystick into the USB port and the simulator will work. Let me just pull up the sim again so that you remember what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that you're able to control this stick and the throttles and pedals using an actual joystick. What we've also done is we've looked around to see what's readily available. What can you buy from Amazon? And what we've come up with is a set. It's called Thrustmaster Flight Stuff. It's about $200, £200. It's that kind of ilk. And there's a stick that works standalone. It's also got a standalone throttle. Although I have to say, this throttle would control the Starship Enterprise. It really would. It's got so many controls on it. We only use one. We use the one for the wheel brake, and we use the actual throttle. So you can get your chair, you can put the throttle. But what's the third control? The third control is a set of pedals. So you get a set of pedals, you connect that as well, and these all work with these simulators that are already in the Gyropedia. We know a few people, the Newman family, who are watching from Sweden. Hello there, Gypsy. Hello there, Ingrid. I know you do this. And so you've got your pedals, you've got your throttle, and you've got your stick, and you've got a chair, and you've got the 70-inch TV screen in front of you, and you're running these, and you're running them all from York. What is also fantastic is we can tie in using the web classroom technology, and I can be sitting here, or your instructor can be sitting at home while you're practicing on your simulator, and you can talk with each other. And coming in 2020, we're using the technique that we've got in the big sim, and we're going to build a standalone stick that means we'll be able to control your stick, throttle and pedals from across the world live. So it will never replace training. We're not trying to replace training. What we're trying to do is say that when you get home, you can connect all this stuff up and you can practice. We've also got one to do with takeoffs and landings. I'm not demonstrating it because you know what? It's not finished yet. It's just not quite good enough. But it will be by this time next year. So there you go. We're running out of time. We're down for 45 minutes. I've just overshot very slightly. So I'm not going to answer any more questions just now, but keep your questions coming in if you wish, and I'll either answer them personally or we'll just roll it forward into the next event or a classroom session. So for me now, I would really like to say thanks for watching. This is the first one we've done. I'm really interested in your feedback. Did it work for you? I know people from Australia were in. I know people from the USA were in. I know people from Sweden, and there's people from the UK in as well. And of course, we've got a friend, hello Claudio, from Uruguay. So fantastic. It's really good. If you could send me some feedback of whether the technology worked for you, that would be excellent. But for now, from me, live from the centre of York, I'd just like to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again soon in the new year.